All right, are we recording? All right, well, welcome everybody to the July meeting for the Colorado Hydrogen Network. We've got a pretty interesting meeting today. You can see from the agenda here, we're going to talk about some privately owned and operated fuel cell vehicles in Colorado. Some of you already know about Roy Hensler and his Nikola trucks, but we've got some Mirais running around as well as a mobile fueler. So Brandon Donor and Jane Allo from Electric Green are going to talk about that. Also have some really exciting news about a Colorado Hydrogen Day event that we're going to have in October, and I'll fill you in on that. And then something I've talked about on the last few meetings is the new membership categories that we've got, and those are now live. So we'll give you a little bit of information on that. So again, I've muted everybody, so if you do want to talk, please absolutely feel free to interrupt, raise your hand, whatever. We want this to be an interactive conversation as much as you can do, at least on Zoom. So please, by all means, do interrupt. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce, first of all, Brendan's going to present first on the local fuel cell vehicles and the fueling. And then after Brendan is going to be Jane Allo. But let me go back and kind of introduce both of them first, and then we can just kind of flow through with those two presentations. But Brendan, for those of you who don't know him, is a principal data scientist at the Pilot Flying J truck stops, I guess I'll call it, fueling centers or whatever. And he has decided to start a little company called Breathe Transport to make Mirai available. And he's got a pretty interesting story about getting that vehicle and getting it licensed and so forth. It'll be available on the Turo car share, and I'll let him explain what that is. And then he's also got a means to fuel that, and he's calling his company Breathe Transport. So, Brendan, I'll turn this over to you in a second. But before I do that, I want to introduce Jane. A lot of you know Jane because she's presented before on some of the CHN meetings, but she and her husband Chris have the company Electric Green, which is off grid up in Lyons between Boulder and Estes Park. And they've been doing residential energy storage as hydrogen, and they're branching out into these mobile fueling stations, which she's talked about before, but I'm going to let her fill in all that. So, Brendan, are you ready? I'll stop sharing and let you share your screen.
Okay. Yep, I am ready. Thanks, Brian.
You bet. Hey, Brendan, if you can turn your camera down, we're just kind of seeing the top of your head. There you go. Good.
Okay. All right. That's better with the camera.
Yep, you're good.
Okay. Perfect. Okay. Well, yeah, thanks, Brian. So, like Brian mentioned, I am at Pilot Flying J for my day job. So I'm just going to start off just introducing myself, just a little bit more detail, and then go into some of the details that Brian mentioned of what I'm doing here with Breathe Transport. So, Colorado native, born and raised. My wife and I have three young kids. We live here in Golden, Colorado. Grew up down in Littleton. But for my free time, I love to do a lot of outdoor things. Grew up in the Boy Scouts. Was very active camping. Really developed a love for nature and wanted to take care of our planet. And that's really behind what I'm doing with Breathe Transport and what I'm trying to do at Pilot Flying J as well. So, like Brian mentioned, I am at Pilot. I have worked a little bit the last year with the company on our hydrogen strategy, and Pilot is going into hydrogen, which is great news. And if you're not familiar with Pilot, Pilot purchased the Flying J uh, company, so the truck stop's owned by Flying J, probably about 15 years ago or so. But at this point, Pilot Flying J is the largest truck stop operator in North America and sells more diesel fuel than anybody else in the country. Because right now, diesel fuel is what we use to power our 18-wheeler trucks. So on the side, as Brian mentioned, I started Breathe Transport. So let me just dive a little bit more into that. So I got the idea for the company back in November, incorporated in February, and started the process. Really probably more after the Christmas time frame of reaching out to companies just to see what options there were out there to do small scale mobile refueling. With the initial idea I had was to purchase Toyota Mirais, try to create a small fleet here in Colorado, and then of course needing to fuel them. So through that process, I connected with Electric Green, who I learned about from the Colorado Hydrogen Network. And because I work with Pilot and that's what people see on LinkedIn, just about every company I reached out to ended up calling me back to discuss pricing and how long it would take to get a fueler. And the best option I found out there was Electric Green. So I'll talk a little bit more about that and how I'm going to produce green hydrogen. But as Brian mentioned, I've got a Toyota Mirai, and yeah, I played around with a number of different ideas of do I get a few different car options and maybe get a Nexo and try to create a small delivery fleet. That idea came from that most of the Amazon packages we get are delivered by people in their personal vehicles. So that was kind of the initial idea. But as I kind of refined this, decided that probably the best thing to do with that vehicle would be to rent it. Number one, to have a positive cash flow so that the business is profitable from day one. But also that gives people the opportunity to drive a hydrogen vehicle and learn about how great they are, which you don't necessarily get to do if you're just having a package dropped off at your front door. So through this process, I'm really going to be learning as I go, learning by doing, and I want to share that with everybody in this group and just the general public. So, I think there's a lot of misinformation out there. There's a lot of misinformation that hydrogen is just not ready. It's too expensive. And so I want to share just the actual data of how much things cost, how much I can produce, how far the car can go, all those types of things on my website. And because I'm a data scientist, I want to also analyze that data. So I'm also going to be writing blog posts and doing some analysis there. So the why behind why I'm doing this is a picture of Denver that I took from South Table Mountain. So I mountain bike up South Table just about every day and get to see the brown cloud that we have here. So air pollution is a major problem for our planet. It's not good for us to breathe, and it's certainly not good for our planet's health. So that's really the why behind this. It's just very important for me what I'm doing professionally, that it's having a positive impact on the planet. So that's why I'm doing this. It's a little more details on producing the hydrogen. And so Jane is going to speak after I go with some more detail on all of this. And then we are going to go into questions after Jane's portion. Um, so I'm just trying to hit on a couple of the big things I get asked about a lot. But what I'm doing, it's small scale. So I'll be producing enough with my trailer, and I can expand up with the trailer that I'll have from Electric Green to support quite a few vehicles. But initially, I'll be able to support two vehicles. I only own one Toyota right now, but it's very small scale what I'm doing, and it is a mobile unit. I don't plan on driving it around much. But as you can see here in the picture on the upper right, it is on a trailer. So it is a mobile unit, and housed in there is a rack of electrolyzers. We're going to have hydrogen storage. We're also going to have a booster, so a dispenser unit, similar to what you would see if you pulled up to the pump in California. So I will be able to fill my Mirai to 700 bar, roughly 10,000 PSI. So it's got everything I need to fuel the vehicle. And so what I'll have plugged into that trailer is really pretty simple. It's going to be a 220-volt cable, the same type of cable that's plugged into our dryer in our house. And the electricity that we get at our house, it's from it's called the Renewable Connect Flex program with Excel. We were grandfathered into this program. We used to be on the wind power program with them. We started on that about 8 or 9 years ago. And I have confirmed with Excel that I qualify for the recs that I need to get that $3 production credit from the federal government. So it is green hydrogen I'll be producing. Someday I do want to put solar panels on our roof. I just spent the money I had available on buying this trailer and car. So that will come a little bit farther down the road. Um, and then the other thing that I've mentioned here, one of the bullet points, is just zero leakage target. So I put a link here to a peer-reviewed article on Nature, just talking about the indirect greenhouse gas effect that hydrogen has if it's leaked into the atmosphere. And so I think that there's still some uncertainty about just how bad of a greenhouse gas it can be, and it's an indirect greenhouse gas. But if there's any possibility that leaking hydrogen into the atmosphere is going to be bad for our planet, I want to make target having zero leakage. And if it turns out that hydrogen is not that bad, that's great. Then I saved a lot of hydrogen that I can use in the car either way. So I think it's kind of a win-win just to really target that. And I do feel like it's something that the industry doesn't talk a whole lot about with that zero leakage. So, that's the big problem with methane or natural gas is the leakage. It's not as bad when you burn it, but when you leak it into the atmosphere, it's a terrible greenhouse gas. So I think we need to avoid that same thing with hydrogen. So the Mirai. So this is the model of Mirai that I'll be renting that I have parked about 50 feet away from me right now. The color of my Mirai is also silver, slightly darker than this picture I have here. This is a photo from Toyota. But I'll be renting it through an app called Turo. I'll probably at some point experiment with some other apps, but Turo is essentially the Airbnb for renting your car. So I just list the car on Turo, provide some information, importantly that it's net zero, how long I can rent it for, how many miles people can drive when they rent it, things like that. And so to rent it, all you have to do is just download the Turo app, search for my Mirai, and I'll have some links on my website and things to make it easy. But it's just like renting an Airbnb. So the key will be available in like a lockbox on the car. People will just come pick it up at the drop off point. So my primary drop off point, I'm hoping to have the Marriott that's right next to NREL be my primary drop off point. So a Denver West pickup. So I kind of mentioned here just on the customers who this will make sense for renting. Anybody who's interested in hydrogen here in the Denver area and wants to come check it out, of course. But just for your typical customer who's maybe coming to visit the Golden area and they just need a rental for a couple of days. And when I travel for work, I typically only driving 100 miles or so. And so I don't have very large mileage needs when I'm traveling for work. When I travel with our family, we typically drive a little bit more. But for those customers who don't need to drive very far, and I say that because there's nowhere to fill the Mirai up today. So Seth and Buford and New Day Hydrogen are going to fix that problem here in the next couple of years, which will be awesome. But today, I'll need to fill it up at my house. So I'm just going to provide one tank. I'm not going to do fill-ups in the middle of a rental. So it's going to be customers with low mileage needs and who can pick it up in the Denver West area. And so then I've got a bullet point for convenience here. And I've worked in retail fuel for a long time. And convenience tends to be the most important thing when people are fueling, but also when they're picking vehicles. So um, if you don't know anything about hydrogen and you just want to rent a cool looking car and you don't need to drive it very far and you can pick it up in Denver West, this will be a more convenient option than anything else out there on Turo. And the reason that's true is because you don't have to fill it up. Now, of course, you couldn't fill it up. But for me, when I rent for work travel, it's always a pain right before I go to the airport to try to find a gas station and go fill up. I'm usually short on time, just coming for meetings, and so that's an inconvenience for me. So that inconvenience will not exist with this rental. And then the other thing is, I'm sure my numbers will shift a little bit once I'm actually doing this, and hopefully we'll be renting the vehicle here in the next couple of weeks. But by my current estimations, I'll be producing the hydrogen for about $1.15 a gallon equivalent. So for the fuel that the renters use, I'm only going to charge them $1.99 a gallon. So I'm not going to be making very much on fuel. I'll be making income just through the rental fee, which is going to be right on par with a Toyota Camry or those types of sedans that are available on Turo. So not going to be charging much more. Well, I'm not going to be charging more than the typical car for this size. And then the fuel cost will be much lower than going to spend $3.50 per gallon at the pump. So some incentive to rent it, even if you don't know anything about hydrogen. So the last big thing that I'm doing, which I'm excited about doing, is as I go through this process, I'm going to learn a lot, probably going to make a lot of mistakes. But I'm going to have great data that I can share with everybody. So I'm going to put that up on my website for free, availability just to download the actual data. So being a data scientist, we always talk about that people need to be able to reproduce the analysis that you do. And the only way that somebody can go and say, this sounds great, you're producing hydrogen for this cost and it can drive it this far, but prove it, show me the data. So I'm going to make the data available, and so they can go decide for themselves just where hydrogen is today. So I just put some links here. There'll be more links on the slides with Jane about how you can contact me and get the information about what I'm doing. So with that, Jane, if you're ready, I'll go ahead and pass it over to you, and then we'll very happy to answer any questions anybody has after Jane's portion.
Okay, let's see here. I want to share.
You see the share button at the bottom there, Jane? It's the green. There you go. Great.
I think I got it. I just want to get it into presentation mode. Can I do that here? There we go. All right. So yeah, thanks, Brendan. That was a really great presentation. Really enjoyed it. And I did want to say that as we all have known for a while, Electric Green has been doing the residential sized, both electrical hydrogen battery storage system as well as hydrogen refueling. We probably 2 or 3 years ago really started branching out into the commercial industry. And so with that, I think we really focused more and more on what really we can do to resolve this chicken and the egg problem with fuel cell electric vehicles here in Colorado. So with that, when Brendan reached out from Breathe Transport, we got very excited because, of course, he is very much mission aligned in what he's doing and what Electric Green is doing. And of course, like Brendan had mentioned, with the smog in Denver and pretty much everywhere, I come from LA, so smog is definitely not a stranger to me. And reducing our CO2 emissions is really key. And so, we're really working at that, as I'm sure all of you are as well. So Electric Green and Breathe Transport are really coming together with this thought of let's really solve this problem of no fuel cell powered hydrogen electric vehicles here in Colorado. And we've been working with Brendan since January now, and looking forward to having his trailer with his refueling system delivered here in August. So, well, actually it'll be delivered here in July, and he's going to start really utilizing and renting his vehicle in August. So very exciting about that. So Electric Green has developed this, what we call an H2Go. And I know I've spoken to you all about this before, but I was going to just emphasize one of the things that we did is we decided to make it mobile so that it can also be easier to take off to, say, a small airport or a rental car facility or a warehouse to refuel forklifts and drones and forklifts, as well as passenger vehicles. And with the idea of trying to solve that problem of no hydrogen refueling in Colorado, and therefore no hydrogen powered vehicles in Colorado, we decided, well, we'll buy some Mirais and we'll get them out there in Colorado. And so we are trying to entice people to purchase a fueling station and either acquire or have the option to use one of our Mirais if they buy a small H2Go, or we could also negotiate with a small fleet since we do have 4 of them. So we're speaking with several different individuals that have presented us with some opportunities, one of them being the Town of Lyons I've spoken to several times now. They're looking to go all electric. And so I said, well, here's a great electric car that utilizes hydrogen. And so they may very well step up to the plate. Also looking forward to talking to some other government officials and hoping to maybe encourage the state of Colorado to purchase a refueling station, and by doing so, have some Mirais that they can drive for their use. So here's some technical specs on it. I know the last time I presented, I also had done this because I know that a lot of you folks are interested in the specs. I also wanted to mention that we do have a large commercial scale refueling system. I know we've been emphasizing the small one here today, but I did want to mention we do have a commercial sized refueling station as well. And we currently are working with a local company here in Colorado that is looking to put out a number of these units, and possibly even right here in Colorado, which would be fantastic. So we're looking to put out at least one in the next 6 months to year, and then roll out as many as upwards towards 500 of them. So working hard at getting this ball rolling. And that's all I have for today. If there's any questions, of course, both Brendan and I are here, and I believe our CTO of Electric Green is also online if there's highly technical questions.
Well, thanks, Jane, and thanks, Brendan. Yeah, we're going to take as many questions as we want to here in just a minute, but I did want to point out a couple of things. The first is that this is a lower cost fueler than a public fueler would be, and the way that I guess I would say that the cost savings is achieved is by that longer fill time. And so certainly as time goes on, we're going to have to make sure that members of the public that see this understand that when they pull up to a fuel station like Pilot or wherever to buy hydrogen, that it's going to be a 3-minute fill, not a couple of hours like this. But I don't know, Jane, if you want to comment on that at all.
Yeah, I do want to comment on that. So, you know, it is the small H2Go that is housed in the trailer, or it can be just, you know, standalone too, but it is right around the 2-hour mark for a complete fill, a 5 kilogram fill. But our other station can accomplish 5 kilograms in 10 minutes. And so that's still comparable to filling your diesel truck or your car at the gas station. So we do offer both, and yes, the small scale H2Go is at a very reasonable low cost, and actually our larger commercial sized refueler is also at a very reasonable cost. We're probably about a third of the cost of most of the other options that you have available to you.
Fantastic.
And so if I could just add a little bit to that.
Hang on, let me mute.
So the reason for the smaller trailer was designed not only for cars, but for drones, forklifts. We have a lot of interest in a lot of areas where we can't get hydrogen to, like Brendan's running into that issue. Okay, where do you get hydrogen? So this gives you a way of getting hydrogen there. Yes, it takes a little bit longer, but the idea was to be able to accommodate that. We've taken our same design, and as James stated, our same design is a 3-box design. It's very simple, it's very safe, and it's roughly a little over $2 million for a full-fledged fueling station that gives you 160 kilograms a day. So that's our smallest one, 160 kilograms a day, with 5 to 10 minute fills. So it's much lower than the current marketplace. It's a lot faster to set up, as we have 3 containers. We set 3 containers down, and our storage is not at super high pressures. Once again, allowing it to be much safer than what's currently out there. So that's my 2 cents, or $1.99, I guess. So.
Thanks, Chris. And it's good to see you. Last time we only had Jane. I don't think we had you on. So,
Oh, I've been on just hidden, just a lot of things to do. I mean, we've got trailers. We have a number of trailer orders. We even have trailers going out to South America. A lot of them are fuels, forklift type fills and things, which is great for the trailers from that level. So.
all right. Well, let's see. Bill Leedy has got his hand up. Go ahead, Bill.
That I admire your entrepreneurial spirit. I wish you great success.
Well, we've got
Jane,
extra wrenches and things like that, so just come on over and you can.
Jane mentioned a couple of small communities that might like to participate. How do you discuss with them what it would cost them to become a fueling station or a fueling center, which would allow them to proliferate the number of hydrogen fuel vehicles? What would it cost them in CapEx and OpEx and general aggravation to do that at this time? Thank you.
Yeah, I don't think that we're necessarily just talking to small towns. I just happened to mention one because that is a barrier for them, frankly. They struggle with a lot of flexibility with their finances. So right now, one of the things that we are willing to offer, something like the Town of Lyons, is to, in essence, lease our demo trailer when it's available, and when we have maybe 2 of them instead of just one, we could lease one to them, and that would allow them not so much in the CapEx department. So we can defray some of that expense for them. And also, as I mentioned, we're probably looking at the either potential of leasing or starting them off with one of our Mirais for very low entry cost. So that's attractive to them, especially when they compare what it's going to cost them to purchase electric vehicles.
Great, thank you. Very ambitious.
About some other questions. Any other hands up here? Maybe I'll throw something in while you're thinking. Brendan, you mentioned that your cost was about $1.15 or $1.25, something like that, which I am pretty sure is just the electricity cost. Electricity for something like this is probably on the order of about $4.25. And with your $3 production tax credit, that gets you to the $1.25. I don't know, between you and Jane, do you guys want to talk a little bit about the CapEx, maybe a range, or if you don't want to mention pricing, that's fine too, but maybe speak to that a little bit.
Yeah, Jane, I'll defer to you on that one.
Yeah. So, our small fueling stations are starting at about $100,000. So it's not out of range for a lot of small companies or or individuals even. There's quite a few individuals that are willing to spend that amount of money on at least a vehicle, and to have your own fueling station is pretty attractive. So we have been getting some fairly positive response from that. But as you may have noted, we are focusing heavily in the commercial sector because of price point. And so individuals have a more difficult time than businesses to affordability on that.
Mhm.
And one thing I'll just throw in there is the 40% tax credit that you get back after that purchase. So you have to float that 40% yourself initially, but then you get that back. So a lot of money does come off of the initial price.
All right. Well, let's see. Kari Berman, retired from NREL, has got her hand up. Go ahead, Kari. Oh, you might be on mute.
Sorry.
Yep,
Thank
we
you.
got you.
Jane, I just wanted to ask you, what is the permitting process for installing one of these mobile or just having the mobile electrolyzer on your property? Is there permitting issues that Lions has to encounter?
No, for the most part, there are not permitting issues. So that's one of the really attractive things about having it in a trailer also.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, and I can just add there that I am going to be having the fire marshal come over to say everything looks good with my setup, just to make sure I am doing everything right. And so Brian and I both took the 8-hour safety class from Phil Clark from over there at NREL. And so I'm going to work a little bit with Phil on that as well, just to make sure that we check all of the right boxes.
Great, thanks.
So, speaking of licensing, Brandon, I think you should tell the story about trying to get the car license, your Mirai license here in Colorado. I thought that was kind of amusing.
Yeah, so part of my trouble was just having a California title. There's a number of things that the DMV didn't like with that, but the story, the part of that I think that Brian likes the best is I was having trouble to get it registered because the initial person I was working with said that hydrogen was not a fuel source, and so she brought the supervisor over who told me also that hydrogen was not a fuel source for a vehicle. And I assured him it was, it was not a car I'd built in my garage. It was a Toyota. And so he went back into his office and checked the computer and came back and said, you're right. Hydrogen is a fuel source for a car. So it took me 3 trips to the DMV to finally get it registered, but I did get it registered and went through similar type of questions when I was getting insurance, that they had never heard of a hydrogen car. And so yeah, I think that's partly why this is so exciting and important of what I'm doing with Jane and Chris is just most of the people in my circle here in Colorado have never heard of a hydrogen car, and they've been on the road and they're actually really nice. So
Well, I have to say, I'm really impressed and also pleased that, you've stuck your neck out to get the vehicle, get the fueler. You're going to put it out there for people to rent. And for sure, I'm going to rent it just for joyride, but throw you some business and get a chance to impress your friends and neighbors with, the cutting edge in vehicles. So fantastic. Really applaud what you're doing. Jane, I have a question for you. What kind of, if any, certification are you looking at doing? I know I think it was through NREL, they did the high step trailer, which was for testing fueling just to see how it measures up, I guess, to J2601, which you're probably not doing J2601 here, but is that something you're working on? And if you want to comment on that, that's fine too. I'm kind of putting you on the spot there.
Yeah, that's okay. That would be probably more in Chris's realm to answer about certifications and stuff. He handles all of that. But the short answer is that we do have quite a bit of certifications already.
Okay, good. Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, I can continue that. Our tanks are certified, the trailer is certified, all our equipment is certified. So getting a UL listing on the entire item is not our goal. We get, I believe it's called an ETL listing, which is in essence a group of certified parts because our trailers can be different. Brendan has a trailer with a number of tanks in it, but no fuel cell. We sell some that have more tanks in them with a fuel cell. We have some that have fuel cells without booster units in them. So, in order to UL list every single variety out there would be cost ineffective. So, that's our whole reasoning for going to an ETL type certification.
Okay, good. All right. Thanks, Chris. All right. How about some other questions? I'm sure there's got to be some more out there. Don't be shy. All right, Bob, go ahead.
Yeah, I can't find the raise your hand button on this version of Zoom. So I just wanted to say hello. First time on here. I've been listening to Brian for roughly forever. I think the whole thing, and it's really been interesting. I especially appreciated that one you did calculating the size copper wiring it would take to install a multi-megawatt battery charger to get to 5-minute charging. That was a nice piece. I got in here late. I had some Zoom issues, and so I haven't seen all of the slides. I kind of understand what's going on, and I'm very impressed. I've been interested in this for a long time. My background is radiation biology, health physics. I used to work at Oak Ridge and nuclear power, and these sorts of things. So it'll be fun to interact with this group. Glad to see so many people on the call, and I see it's being recorded, or Brian had told me that as well. So I'll go back, look through your first slides, Brendan. I got in about halfway through your show, and I won't waste your time asking you questions you already answered. So thanks very much for Brian for inviting me, and I will stay involved in this. Thanks.
Great. Great. Glad to have you, Bob. Bob, where are you? Are you in the Denver area?
So I'm camping right now. I look a little rough maybe on the view. Luckily, I think it's a small screen. We're up at Kurt Gowdy State Park for the next few days. I live in Fort Collins, and we've been there for a long time. And one question I will ask, Brendan, because at the very end, I realized that it's you that will be renting a hydrogen-powered car, and I get the range limits and so on. I'd be interested in doing that. I have driven the Mirai back about 4 years ago at one of the Los Angeles conferences, and I agree with you. It's smooth and powerful, and you hear it used to hear the fans kind of warm up and start moving things around, and then the car ran. Very impressive. So I'll contact you, I imagine, through the Zoom call or through Brian or something, and we'll get in touch, or through Turo. I'm aware of that. So that's fun to hear.
Great.
Great.
Well, glad to have you
So
participating, Bob.
I have to ask Bob, is that a special screen behind you and you're in a tent, or is that really your screen?
Yes. So I walked into the visitor center at Kurt Gowdy, and yeah, this is my
Yeah.
AI screen that I always post to impress people. It's actually, I'm in a conference room at the visitor center. The nice person here said, "Why don't you sit in there so you can talk and not interrupt things out at the main visitor center?" So I think I'm looking at it for the first time right now too. I think it's their kitchen in their conference room at the Kurt Gowdy Visitor Center, and I'm pleased that you're impressed with it.
I
Yeah,
did
Bob,
post a little thing with the chat. If you guys would like me to share, I can show you a SolidWorks of our trailer. It's a nice way to get an internal view of the trailer, how it's put together. If that
Yeah, go
would
ahead.
be
We've got
fun for
time
anybody.
too, Chris. So
And-
yeah, please go
And
ahead.
Brendan, if you'd hold that comment, I'd appreciate hearing that too. But
Yeah.
first, thanks.
Chris, are you sharing or just there we go?
Yeah, I'm just slow
There we go. We
pressing
got
the
it.
buttons
Yeah.
because Zoom is a little different. So this is the way, I mean, we design it so that we can determine fitment. So this is a fully loaded system here. Well, almost fully loaded. So we have a number of tanks This number of tanks can store roughly 22.5 kilograms of hydrogen. This is our booster unit. We have our fuel cell unit, so we can take hydrogen, go through the booster and come out. I don't show the nozzles because it was too hard for our mechanical guy to show nozzles. That's our fuel cell unit down there, which is DC. The DC would come out through an inverter that sits inside our cabinet. From the inverter comes out through, here's Brendan's plug he talked about, where you plug into that so you can get grid in, or you can get grid out. That's made by the system. Our solar panels go as a rack that fits over the top, and we can hold 18 solar panels that are roughly 500 watt solar panels, which allows us to make a lot of hydrogen during a sunny day. These panels fold out from the unit. They would come in through our junction box. That junction box then would allow it to go through our electrolyzers and go and be turned into hydrogen. We have our own water. If you need water, so you don't want to hook up to water with a pump, this can be a 50 gallon, 25 gallon, since the electrolyzers don't use that much water. It doesn't have to be that large, but this gives you an idea of what the system looks like. This one is a 20, no, this one's an 18 by 8.5 foot trailer. We also make a 20 by 8.5 foot trailer. Well, actually, no, this is the 20 because it has, hopefully I'm making everybody dizzy. This is an 18 because we have the fuel cell in it, or a 20 because we have the fuel cell in it. If we don't use the fuel cell, we make this an 18. It's just a little tighter.
These are the 500 PSI tanks?
Correct.
Yeah. And what was the total mass of hydrogen?
Weight of hydrogen, or
The weight, yep.
yeah, 22.5 kilograms.
Thanks. The
That
10,000
allows us
the
to
10,000
fill
unit,
6 cars on that, or five cars.
5 cars. The 10,000 PSI unit, how much trouble have you had with licensing or restrictions with regard to those tanks?
On the booster unit?
No, there was a mention of a 10,000 PSI system that
No.
actually, I'm sorry, that actually stores 10,000, I think.
No, you can't do that. So we generate everything at low pressure. Low pressure, the Department of Transportation is okay with. When you get over 2,200 PSI, they don't like that. You have to have a commercial license. So we keep everything at 500, and you have to have a certain maximum amount of stored hydrogen before you have to get a special license. So we're under that. We then take it from here with our proprietary booster, and this booster will take it from 500. Well, actually, it'll take it all the way from 30 PSI up to 10,000 PSI. And the same booster technology that we designed is also used in our large scale fueling station. So when we have a large scale fueling station, what's actually out at the pumps is nothing. There's no big tanks or anything out at the pumps. There's just a booster unit, and the tanks and everything else is behind the wall.
Yep. Interesting.
So I think, Bob, I think what you heard or saw was my presentation where I had 5,000 or 10,000 PSI, and I was referring to the output with the booster itself, not
Oh,
the
I misunderstood.
storage.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Okay, maybe one more question. Have we got one, or had you been asked for a comment there, Brendan, on something?
Yes, please.
Yeah, I was just going to mention, Bob, if it was 4 years ago that you rented a Mirai, it would have had to have been the older model. And so the model I have was released in 2021. And so it's a little bit bigger. There are seats for 5 people in the vehicle versus 4 for the previous version, and it's got a little bit longer range. So just thought I'd mention that.
Good, thank you. Yeah, I'm pretty sure I had the older version. It was a 4-seater, as I recall. So, good.
So there's a couple questions out there, Brian. I thought I'd just
okay. Yeah, go ahead.
So we'll take them in order here. So what's the production capability of these stations? And so there's a couple different ways of answering it. You can produce until you run out of hydrogen. So for example, Brendan's system has 8 tanks in it, and he will be able to produce 3 kilo or you can store 6 kilograms of hydrogen in there, so we'll be able to produce 5 kilograms of plus a little of hydrogen out of that per filling. How would he get more? He just adds some more tanks. You can increase the number of electrolyzers to fill your tanks faster, or you can have more tanks to have more capacity. So it will produce constantly 24 cubic meters per hour of hydrogen compressed at 700 bar. So that's until you run out of hydrogen. There's another question, what's the water quality that's required? So typically on these, you just fill it with street water. Not street water, but city water. Yeah, municipal water. On the ones without the tanks or even with the tanks, we have a little hose bib on the side where you can just hook a hose to it and it'll take water as it needs it.
All right. Well, everyone, you're going to get a chance to see the trailer and, of course, see the Mirais, which many of you have seen before, at our Hydrogen Day event. So there's my my segue to the next segment here. And Chris, maybe if I can get you to stop the share, we'll move on to talk about that because we've got about 45 minutes left in the meeting here. So
now to find out where I stopped the share.
Yeah. Is there
I don't have a screen anymore.
I don't think it'll let me. Oh, I guess I can force yours to stop, Chris. There we go.
Do that because I can't find it.
All right. Okay. All right. Back to my slides here.
Nothing like the engineers.
Well, all right. So let's talk about Hydrogen Day. That is a national event that's been going on, I think, 5 or 6 years now. The National Hydrogen Day is October 8th, and that date was chosen because of the semblance to the atomic number of hydrogen is 1.008. But we want to have something on the weekend, and we had originally tried for Saturday, but we couldn't get a venue. So we're going for Sunday, October 6th. And what we've got planned is to have an event down at the new CSU Spur campus. It's down the National Western Center, roughly near I-25 and I-70 here in Denver. We're planning to have is an exhibit hall with basically trade show kind of booths and some other things. We're going to have a media briefing in a press room so that well, I'm getting a little ahead of myself, but I'll talk to the details there. And then outdoor display, which, as I mentioned, we're going to show the trailer and the fueler and some cars and trucks and things. So we're looking for, I've got a list of about 40 either companies or organizations, of course, like NREL and the Energy Office and so forth. But we'd like to get some booths from all of those to highlight the event. And then being ever the storyteller, podcaster, and educator that I am, I want to set up literally dozens of basically freestanding posters educating the public so that as the public comes and walks through this, they don't necessarily have to really talk to anybody and ask questions. They can read these posters, they can see the booths from the different companies and the organizations and engage, asking people questions as they like, but certainly by osmosis, just walking around, they're going to learn a lot. So I mentioned we want to have a media briefing in a press room, basically for the media, print, TV, radio, and so forth, as well as for the booth sponsors to attend. We're planning on inviting the Colorado Energy Office Director Will Tour and Governor Jared Polis and Mayor Johnston as well. And I'm working with the Energy Office and so forth on getting some of that set up. And then, like I said, the outdoor display, we've got Brandon's Mirai. Jane and Chris will bring at least one of their Mirais down, I hope. The NREL has got an EXO. We'll see if we can get that out there. Hopefully, Roy will bring his Nikola truck out again, and of course the mobile fueler. We can also have food available, and I'll show this in a minute. But the building there, the so-called hydro building, has got a kind of a cafe in it, and so as people want some food or some drink, they can certainly get that there. So a little bit about this poster session I'm talking about. Typically, a poster session with technical conferences, you have a presenter that'll speak to the poster, but this is going to be self-guided. I think it's going to be an important part of the event to really give the public and, well, certainly anyone who's attending this an idea of what's going on with hydrogen, and especially what's going on with hydrogen here in Colorado. Plan on making these very eye-catching, either through the message or with the graphics, make them pretty simple. I want to target maybe a high school level and non-technical. So I'll really be, I think, exercising myself trying to get these as simplified as possible. But the kind of topics I think people be interested in is asking about safety, water use. Does hydrogen take a lot of water to make it? And indeed, even why hydrogen? I think so many people have maybe heard this phrase, electrify everything, or they see the battery cars out there and they think, well, that's all we need. And there's a little more to that. And so we want to present that as well as things about sources of hydrogen. Everybody knows about electrolysis, but what about natural hydrogen wells and those kind of things? I'd like to, as gently as I can, work in a poster about climate and the amount of CO2 that's going up in the atmosphere. And also talk about EVs. People today tend to think an EV is just a battery car. Well, there's more to it than that. So we want to cover that. And of course, the basics about electrolyzers and fuel cells. And then I'd also really like to highlight the work that the state of Colorado, the legislature, the Colorado Energy Office, and others have done to really help establish hydrogen technology here. And like I said, outdoor will have the vehicles and the fuelers. So here's an example of what I'm talking about for these posters. Again, try to make these very graphic. These seem pretty busy, but the main point I think can be gleaned at just a glance. Does it use a lot of water? No. Here's how much for compared to an average fuel station and an average restaurant, and compared to gasoline as well, because people say, well, geez, we're going to use all this hydrogen. Well, if we're not making gasoline anymore, we've got more water available from that for hydrogen use. So just some examples of what we're doing there. So for those of you that have not been down to the Spur campus, the CSU has built 3 buildings down there. There's Hydro, of course, with water, Terra for the earth, and Vita for life. And beautiful buildings. This is the outside of the Hydro building. Here's the lobby of the Hydro building. And I'd like to point out here that this Western Daughters kitchen is this area right here where you see these globe lamps hanging down. And the room that we've got selected for the venue is there. They call it the Confluence Theater. And it does have slide out bleachers, but we'll have it set up, configured just an open space. So we can set booths up around the perimeter and in the center. And then I'd like to have these freestanding educational posters kind of sprinkled throughout the room. So I think we've got room. I'm going down there on Thursday to finalize this and sign the papers and so forth, and do some more detailed measurements of the room. But I estimate we can probably get 20 to 25 4-foot by 8-foot booths in there. So the 4 feet is your standing space, and the 8 foot would be the length of the booth. But certainly for companies that have maybe smaller pop-up displays and so forth, they don't necessarily have to use that much space. All right, so I'm going to be sending out an email on this, basically inviting companies and organizations to participate and giving some details on that. But would like to get everyone to help spread the word, through social media, on your own LinkedIn or Facebook sites or whatever. Maybe mention this, maybe rebroadcast the message that I'll put out for the Colorado Hydrogen Network. I've got some contacts, a couple of podcasters in town. I've also got a contact at Channel 7 TV. But if any of you happen to know somebody or know of somebody that is with, for example, Colorado Public Radio or one of the other TV stations, or the folks maybe over at the Colorado Sun or Denver Business Journal or whatever, like to try to get them interested. And since CHN is a nonprofit organization and this is really for the public good, I'm hoping that a number of these will be interested in kind of picking that up and running as a public interest kind of a thing. And of course, attend the event and bring your friends and bring the family along. And for those in a position to sponsor booths, I'd like to shoot for 18 to 25 exhibitors. And there's a list of over 40 that I'm going to be sending out invitations to. I made a guess that we probably get about 27. So that'd be a great turnout. We certainly don't want this to be to seem dead. Want to have plenty of support there. We are going to ask for a booth or a sponsorship or an exhibitor fee of about $150, which is going to help defray some of the costs of the rental of the room and spaces. We're going to have the Confluence room, which is $2,400 to rent, and then a couple of the classrooms, which are $480 for those two. So we've got some expenses and some other things, and certainly CHN will step in and help pick up some of this, but really don't have the budget to just sponsor the whole thing. And as I said, I'll be sending out an email invitation with details on this and asking folks to let me know if you're interested in having a booth. I think for Electric Green and certainly for Brendan, the setup that you'll have outside, also with some of these posters to advertise, will be probably your booth. Chris, I just saw you flip down your microphone. Were you going to say something?
Yeah, we're going to drive it in.
Into the building? No. That'll be set up outside.
I know. I was just kidding.
Kidding. Well, that's an
I wanted to
interesting.
see your reaction to that one.
Well, we were looking at the Stockyards exhibit, or what's it called, exhibition center or whatever, and they have an arena that's a big building, and we actually could put things indoors. But I think the hydro is a little nicer and it'll work out better. It's actually a lot less money. We'd have to pay for public parking at the Stockyards, so that was kind of a deal breaker with that one. But
Brian?
Yeah.
That's a real interesting idea. I mean, what better way to demonstrate the water exhaust than driving it around in a building? People seeing a car driving around the inside will be, there'll be a lot of questions.
Yeah.
You can do this.
Well, and we're going to, I assume, do this event again next year and hopefully get our reservation in time to get a Saturday. But we might think about doing something indoors next time. Maybe we'll rent the whole Coliseum. Who knows?
Yeah, right.
All right. So again, I'm really hoping that a lot of the companies that I'm in contact with will consider becoming an exhibitor. One of the things that I'd like to do after the media presentation by the governor and the mayor and so forth, and we'll tour, is to walk them around and just very briefly introduce them to a lot of the exhibitors, show them basically the what I'm calling the plethora, because I can't think of a better word for this, of the Colorado hydrogen stakeholders. We've really started to get traction here in Colorado. I mean, I've been at this now almost 5 years, it'll be 5 years next month. And we're a grassroots organization, which I don't know of anybody else out there that's doing that. And I assume that through LinkedIn and the podcast, I probably would have heard from somebody if they were out there doing it. As a matter of fact, on some of the podcasts, I've said, "Hey, if you want to start grassroots in your area, let me know and I'll help." But um, we've got a lot to be proud of, and I think also the state of Colorado can be proud of um, the financial help that they've set up with the enterprises and so forth, the uh, hydrogen roadmap that's out there, and other things. So this is our opportunity to just announce to the city and the state and anyone else what we're doing here and why and the impact that we're having. The other thing I think is that we don't all get to see each other face to face too often. As a matter of fact, a lot of you I've never met. And so I think this is a great opportunity for us to network, see what other folks are doing. I just think there's real synergy in that. And of course, helps support the event. And who knows, maybe we'll even write a purchase order at this. You never know. All right, so I'm going to stop there for a second. Oh, I see, Bill. You've had your hand up for a little bit. Go ahead, Bill Eady.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead.
Brian, three questions. That room is going to get crowded if you have both posters and 20 booths in there. How are you going to arrange the posters? Second question, remember you presented a couple of posters at the ASCS meeting down in Albuquerque. And we have some other posters on hydrogen topics. I'd be glad to loan them for you if you're a few posters short. I can mail them to you and you can mail them back. And third, you've got a solar hydrogen demonstrator, don't you? And surely you'll feature that prominently, won't you?
Oh, you're talking about, we call it the toy. It's a
Right.
it's actually we didn't buy that from Horizons. It's from one of the competitors, but it's a combination of electrolyzer and fuel cell. That's a little desktop unit, and it's got a solar cell. You set up a light on that. It generates electricity, generates hydrogen, and then the fuel cell turns that back into electricity to spin a little fan. And that's, yeah. Seth and Buford at New Day Hydrogen have got that, and they've promised to bring it along. I assume they can still find it. And but yeah, Bill, I'll let you know on the posters. And you're right. We're jamming a bit in there, but I don't really know what kind of a turnout we're going to get from the public. I'll know on the booths before we do this, but what I didn't want to have is to have a big empty room with not much going on. I'd rather have it a little bit cheek by jowl to a certain extent, just because I think it'll create a little bit more excitement over the event. But
is there a big hallway where you can put the posters?
yeah, there's a lobby. We can do some of that out there, and then the things for the fueler and the vehicles and stuff, those will be actually outdoors.
Right. Great. Good luck.
Okay. Well, thank you. Jane, you got your hand up. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment. I agree with you, Brian, on the thought about having it look like there's a lot going on. I think that's an excellent idea. And so I'm excited about that. I'm happy to help with rounding up some marketing. So I don't know what you have on your agenda for marketing to get people to come to this event, but I'd like to engage with you and chat about that. And
Okay.
lastly, I am also interested in signing up for a booth. So.
All right. Well, Jane, would you be happy to have posters outside with the vehicles and the fueler and stuff, or do you also want to have a spot indoors?
So long as it's not raining.
Well,
I was thinking that I'd like to, be supportive and also get a booth, unless there's so much response that there isn't enough space.
okay. All right. Okay.
Does that work?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. And Brendan is acting as co-chair on this. He and I are having calls to plan, and so we'll loop you into one of those. And certainly, I'm hoping to loop in a few other people too to get some hands to help on
Excellent.
this. But
Excellent.
I'm really excited about this, and I've been so frustrated past years of having nothing other than shadow puppets to do at Hydrogen Day. And now, Jane, thanks to what you and Chris are doing, and what Brandon is doing, and Roy Hensler with his vehicles and so forth, I think this is this is really going to be a screaming show. I really do.
Hey, Brian.
Yeah.
I tried to raise my hand, but I don't know how to do it on the screen. But so we have like our electrolyzer manufacturer that has a distributor right in Colorado, right in Centennial. So I know they'd be interested to come out and show some stuff. And we also have, I know I'm going to a UAV show in September in Las Vegas. It's the third through the fifth in Las Vegas, talking about hydrogen drones, and that's their big show. So actually, I was going to be speaking about our trailer and whatnot, but I would think that I could get one or two of the drone guys there also, possibly with a hydrogen drone. Hopefully, their receptacle is fixed so they could fill it with our system. But that might be, another interesting thing is to
Yeah.
have a drone flying around.
Absolutely. And this is definitely not limited to people who have an address in Colorado. I mean, I think Nicola Weiss from H2GP is on. Nicola's is going to be there to talk about hydrogen or Horizon Educational and so forth. And so, I'll be polling the companies and the organizations here. And if it turns out we've got 40 people that want a booth, we'll find another venue. Okay. But for the moment, I think this is going to work. Just my educated guess on how many takers I think we're going to get because other people may want to and just, can't because of the date conflict or something like that. But anyway, but go ahead, Bob. I see your hand.
Oh, thank you. A couple of things. One, could we figure out some way to have badges of members of this group so that as we're wandering around, we can buttonhole other folks? Could come up with something attractive, probably in blue, I would think, or green, pick something.
Yeah. We'll definitely do that. Anybody who's affiliated with CHN, I'm going to get them a CHN logo shirt, but I think we'll have badges for the other, like exhibitors badge or whatever, so people will know who's who and can identify folks.
Good. Then the other thing is, will you be requesting people to register in advance, free registration, but that'll give you an idea if you've got thousands or three.
Yeah.
Showing up.
Well, I'm still noodling on that one. I think you're referring to like the public, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. I have mixed feelings there. I mean, if you do get people to sign up, sometimes they don't show anyway. But maybe you have walk-ins that equal that. I've got to think that one through. I think it might be difficult to guess on the public amount of public, and hopefully we're surprised on the plus side by a little bit, not totally overrun with thousands and thousands of people. But we'll see. And it's an 8-hour event, so hopefully the crowds do spread out a bit.
Yeah, registering causes people to put it on their calendar, and then if they don't show up, that's fine. But if it turns out you're swamped by the number of public, you'd also want to change venues somehow too.
Right.
So
yeah.
Just a thought.
Well, maybe next time Brendan and I are together, we'll noodle on that one a little bit, see how we want to handle that.
Great.
But yeah, I mean, events like this, I mean, someone mentioned, maybe it was Chris mentioned the weather. I did look, October 6th is a pretty dry day on average in Colorado. Who knows, we could get a tsunami, or not a tsunami, a haboob of wind coming through or dust storm. But we'll keep our fingers crossed on that and see where that goes. There's only so much you can do,
Yeah.
All right. Any other questions? I want to take just a minute to talk about our new membership rates, which I have mentioned before, but I don't want to cut us short here if there's any last questions. Anybody else? All right. Okay. Well, Colorado Hydrogen Network membership. For those of you that maybe haven't been on some of the other meetings, we've been in existence for about 4.5 years and haven't really had much of a budget. And that's because our expenses are small. There's the cost of the website and Zoom and a little bit of marketing material. And, labor, which is mostly me, is all volunteer and happy to do that. We have had a few paying members, which have been fairly large companies that have basically provided us with a little bit of budget. But it's always bothered me that we have so many people that have an interest in CHN and are loyal, loyal attendees of the meetings and so forth, but they're not really contributing in any way, and that's not a criticism, but I just feel like it'd be nice to have people more included and kind of invested in the organization. Our dues in the past started at $1,000, and that's because the CHN membership has also included a Colorado Clean Tech Industries Association, CCIA membership. And that's because CHN was formed under CCIA, and we were kind of relegated to following CCIA's membership rates. So I got the idea to come up with some new membership categories, and the relatively new executive director, Laura at CCIA, was fine with this. So we've set up some new, I'll call it dues, but memberships, $50 a year for individuals and $200 a year for a startup company for 2 years. And I know there's been a couple of startups that have already paid the CCIA rate of 1,000, but certainly go another 2 years for them at 200, which I think is going to be a lot more palatable for a lot of folks that are just starting out. The other thing about these dues is that they're completely voluntary and they're going to be tax deductible. So everybody is absolutely welcome to participate and engage with CHN at no charge. We'll continue doing that. So please don't feel obligated to do this. But the benefits of donating is that it kind of helps support and grow CHN. People become a little bit more invested, a little bit more engaged if you're contributing a little bit. And we'd also like to build up a bit of I don't know if a war chest or a kitty or something, that someday we can have a paid position. There may be some point where we want to continue the organization, but I, for whatever reason, couldn't do it or something. We'd have to pay somebody. Well, right now, we've got no money to be able to pay any kind of a salary. So it'd be nice to build that up a little bit. And then, of course, things like Hydrogen Day. I mean, we'll probably spend $3,500, $4,000 on this event, and some of the booth rental, so to speak, is going to help cover that. But there's other things, and we'd like to have some more face-to-face events as well. And even if we just get a few munchies and rent a hall, you could spend thousands on that. So it'd be nice to build up our budget a little bit. And then also what I'd like to do is have a little bit more of a solid web page that lists the members on there. All right, so here's basically a table of what this looks like. So for CHN only membership, tax deductible for individuals and startups, you can see the $50 and $200. And then we'll continue to have the joint CHN and CCIA membership, which is really kind of a corporate membership. And I recommend that if you'd like to see, kind of what CCIA does and so forth, is go to coloradocleantech.com and just take a look at the kind of things that they do. And by the way, Laura and I have been talking about trying to bring together CHN and CCIA a little bit more. Right now, CCIA has a lot of the oil industry and some of those other energy industry folks participating in some of their events and so forth. And CHN has been kind of separate, but I'd like to start bringing the two organizations a little bit more closely together as far as what our initiatives and what we're doing, as well as start cross-pollinating. Let's have an event where it's maybe a hydrogen plus petroleum industry event, whether it's a workshop or whatever, and start educating those folks a little bit more about the possibilities of hydrogen and how those things work and how maybe they can start decarbonizing some of their infrastructure. For example, in the oil drilling, they have these huge generators. They call them gensets, and they're basically a diesel generator or diesel motor that's running an electric generator. And those things go through hundreds of gallons of diesel a day. And if they were to convert those over to, say, for example, even just an internal combustion hydrogen engine, they could make a real tangible, I guess I'll say, contribution to reducing some of their greenhouse gases. True, they're producing a greenhouse product, but at least it's a start, and it's something that they can show to their either shareholders or their board and so forth. So if you go to the Colorado Hydrogen Network website, colorado-hydrogen.org, oh, let me hang on a second. I've got a slide on this. I'm getting ahead of myself. So that's there. And then this is what the website page looks like. And again, you see this table here of what the dues are. If you do want to join as an individual or a startup, you'd want to click this Join Individual Startup button, and that takes you to the tax deductible page. And then if you're a corporation and you'd like a CHN plus CCIA membership, join as a corporation. Now, I will say that if you work for Excel's first company comes to mind, and Excel says, no, forget it, we're not going to do this, but you'd like to join as an individual and just pay the 50 or whatever, or just participate without even paying, that's fine too. But the important thing is to just really start getting us all kind of working kind of the same direction, and basically contributing to making our little grassroots organization really go. One thing that's still under construction, you see that here, is just a donation spot. This is something we haven't done before, but this is actually through CCIA's 501c3 tax deductible. So if we get a corporation that says, hey, we'd just like to write a $1,000 check to you guys one time, we can certainly use that, and that'll be tax deductible for them. All right. Any questions at this point? Yeah, go ahead, Bob.
I only jump in when no one else does. Sorry. Is there a website that lists bios of the folks I'm seeing on screen and the rest of the members? And is that a good idea?
Oh, yeah. Actually, if you go to the colorado-hydrogen.org website and go to the About button, well, it's pretty brief, but my bio, as well as Franz Westenbrink, who's one of the other co-founders who's on the call, and then Dr. Brian Wilson, who is the executive director of the CSU Energy Institute. So there's...
I was thinking the full membership, or any folks who wanted to put a bio out there, it would be interesting to scan through that and make phone calls to people that have particularly interesting backgrounds.
Yeah, well, that's an interesting point. At one time, I did want to have a list of members and maybe a point of contact, but you get a little nervous about putting a lot of people's personal, it's not that personal, I guess, an email address, but information out there. So, we've got to use a little bit of care, I think, around that, how much we expose people.
Yep. Okay. Thanks.
Sure. Other questions? All right.
I've got,
Go ahead, Bob. That's all right.
One more. I just saw this the other day, day before, I think, and it was fascinating. Who here, raise your hands, since I can't figure out how to do the hand button either, is familiar with the Joby vertical takeoff and then airplane flight system in Australia, JOBY. Okay, get on the internet right away. So they've been building a battery-powered six propeller system that lifts off, and then the propellers turn and it flies. It gets more distance because it's actually an airplane once it's taken off. So they get 80 miles or something out of their batteries because they've got, it's like a lightning. They've got some number of tons of batteries in this airplane, which is not a great idea. Just recently, they tested their hydrogen-powered version. It's the same aircraft that gets about between 80 and 100 miles on batteries. You want to guess what it gets on hydrogen? They just completed a pretty long test for the thing. 526 miles on hydrogen.
Wow.
And it weighs much less, of course. That's with 46 kilograms of hydrogen. It flies for 521 miles. And they're still developing this thing. So look up JOBY on YouTube. You are going to be really impressed with this thing.
So hey, Bob, you should look at Heaven Drones also, and Selling H2. They're doing similar kind of stuff. Heaven Drones.
Heaven is in the big guy?
Not with the A, just HEVEN. They're actually out of Israel. Cellen H2 is out of Houston. There's a number of places. So if you go to hysky.org, hysky.org, they're a nonprofit, and they have a monthly thing also and they have different places talking
Great.
about their drones, but they were talking about how much more hydrogen can do, and they're a real proponent for us.
Yeah, this is a factor of 6, which is what you always see with anything that flies. So, yep.
Yeah, by the way, I did a podcast with High Sky. I can't tell you off the top of my head what episode that was, but
I've forgotten it.
check
Yep.
check it out and take a listen to that.
Great, thanks.
All right, yeah, thank you, Bob. Other questions here? I think we're kind of on the home stretch. Comments or even criticisms? Huh?
Well, this is Jane Allo. I'll comment, Brian. I think that you are doing a remarkable job, and I really appreciate you.
Well, thanks, Jane. Well, this is a labor of love. There's no way I could stop doing this, and my conscience certainly wouldn't let me. But it's just, it's so rewarding. Right now, hydrogen has got quite a tailwind, I think. And to see what's happening and the support that we've gotten from the Colorado Energy Office. I know Maria at least was on earlier, and thank you to everybody that's been supportive here. And like I say, I think we may be the only grassroots organization around that's doing this, and that's kind of exciting too.
Yeah,
And,
well,
and
you're
it's,
doing a great job.
well,
Really
thanks.
appreciate it.
And the grassroots part of it is certainly by necessity. If I was Bill Gates or or one of those, I would throw some money at this. That's for sure. But we've got to do it on a shoestring, and it's so far working. So.
Yep.
All right, I think. Yeah. Gee, I almost forgot. We had one more thing here, and I know Nicola Weiss was on earlier. I don't know, Nicola, are you still on? Maybe you're on mute. At any rate, let me keep pressing here. So, this falls under the category of workforce development, and so the H2GP, which stands for Hydrogen Grand Prix, as in Grand Prix Racing Foundation, and CHN have teamed up to sponsor high school radio controlled car racing here in Colorado. And I'm actually on the board of H2GP, and basically the idea here is that this Grand Prix Pro, as it's called, is a science, technology, engineering, mathematics-based educational program for students where they really can get engaged with the technology and the science by designing and constructing and then racing hydrogen-powered cars. So the students work in teams. They design, engineer, construct, and as I always like to say, being an engineer, it's not enough just to design it and build it. You got to go test it and then fix everything you didn't think of. So, that's part of this hands-on approach. Is it really, it kind of takes it out of the abstract and makes it a little more tangible for the students. And to increase the fun factor, I guess I'll say here, is that this program culminates in a series of regional 4-hour endurance races amid the students, and they'll compete regionally, and then there's a national, and then there's an international competition as well. That's been going on for years. Horizon Educational is actually headquartered in Prague, so it's a very international organization. So we're asking, and this is, I think, maybe the third month that I've talked about this, but asking for all of you to help us contact schools and sponsors. Either just identify a school and say, hey, I know of this teacher, or here's the name, or whatever, or here's the principal. And if you can give us even an email, that would help. And we'll certainly do the reaching out. You don't need to worry about fear factor of making cold calls or anything like that. We can do that. But the other thing too is if you have a school in mind, for example, maybe you're a company that would like to sponsor some of this, and you'd like the school that your own children go to, let us know what the school is, and we'll reach out. Nicola is very good at figuring out how to contact school boards and principals and so forth, having done that quite a bit. We're also looking for sponsors, and any sponsorship is tax deductible, whether it's individuals or corporate sponsors. Sponsoring a team is about $6,000 plus a little bit of tax and things on top of that. That would be a car and 5 students, but certainly, if you wanted to sponsor less than that, and maybe you wanted to team up with another company or something, we'll entertain all ideas there. And then because we haven't done this in Colorado before, we need about $11,000 to get a track. And the track consists of really big pieces of carpet and like a perimeter to keep the cars from going off the track and so forth. The timing and those things will be provided by Horizon, and so we don't have to pay for that. But the track, the 11K, that's a one-time purchase. We'll store that and we'll use that in following years, and it should last a number of years. Of course, sponsors get promotional recognition, CHN website, as well as at the racing events. And so if you've got any ideas here, if you just want to suggest a school or have some possible points of contact, please just shoot me an email, and you can get my email off of the website as well if you lose track of that. But let us know. So enough said there. Last thing is just a podcast update. I will say I have not put out a new podcast episode for a while. For the first few years, I was on a cadence of doing it every other week, and frankly, started running out of real fresh material. I didn't want to just start putting companies up here and talking about their product or whatever. I really like to have things that are more unique, and maybe also integrate ideas together a little bit that you aren't hearing other places. And so that's one of the things I try to do. But we've got some podcasts planned. I think Brendan, Jane, and I'll probably end up doing a podcast. Got a few other things. I'm at the point now where people are actually contacting me saying, "Hey, are you interested in having this CEO or whoever on the podcast?" And Plug Power was a good example. They came to me and said, "Hey, how about putting Tim on the podcast?" So there's where we are. We've just hit about the 40,000 download mark. I don't know how many subscribers we have because I'd have to go to all of the different podcast platforms to find that out. I don't think there's one clearinghouse for that, and I just frankly haven't bothered to look. But you see, we got most of the downloads in North America, both Canada and the US, fair number in Europe and Asia too, kind of remarkably. All right, that is all I have, but we've got about 3 minutes left. If anybody else has any more comments or questions, happy to take those. Are we all good? Well, we had a good turnout. We got up to almost 40 people, which is quite a crowd, I think, for these types of calls. I can't think of many other calls that I've been on that get that kind of a crowd. So appreciate everybody's support. Did I hear somebody go off mute there? No? All right. Okay, let's not belabor it. Thank you, everybody. We'll adjourn for this month, and I hope to see you all at Hydrogen Day in October.
Yeah, we'll be there. Thank you very much.
All right.
Thanks, Brian.
Yeah, thank you, everybody.
Thanks, Brian.